Welcome to Excel magic trick number 1490. Hey, this trick should actually be called a DAX, Power Pivot, and Power BI desktop trick because we're going to see how to create a DAX calculated column to do both an approximate and an exact match lookup. Now, the thing about DAX and Power Pivot and Power BI Desktop is there's an easy way to do an exact match lookup. But approximate match, oh man, it's not as easy as VLOOKUP in Excel. But in this video, I will show you how to do it. Now, this follows up on our last video, 1489, where our goal was to look up the discounted unit price based on the product where we got the price from this column using exact match lookup, and then we had to apply a certain discount based on quantity. So in this formula in Excel, we did exact match and approximate match. And guess what? We simply used VLOOKUP twice, and because that function can do both types of lookup, our formula was relatively easy. Well, when we get over to DAX, there's going to be a trade-off because exact match lookup will be much easier than using VLOOKUP in Excel, but approximate match will be a little bit trickier. Now, this is the formula we're going to use, and guess what? We're going to see how to create these two lookups in Power Pivot inside of Excel, and then I'll open up Power BI Desktop and show you how to create the same formulas with a different user interface over in Power BI Desktop. Now let's go over to the sheet 1490 DAX. Now in Excel, you must have your tables either imported from some external source, or if the tables are in Excel, you have to convert each table to an Excel table. Now, I've already done that. With a single cursor selected, I went up to Insert and click the Table button. So all three of our tables are official Excel tables. And in order to create calculated columns, you must get the right version that includes Power Pivot. That means you have Office 365 Pro Plus or Excel 2016 Professional. Now, I've already imported these three tables using Add to Data Model, and now I'm going to click Manage the Data Model. Of course, in Power Pivot and over in Power BI Desktop, we have a separate area where we can look at the tables. If I look down here, I have 1, 2, 3 different tables, and there's the F sales with our transactions. In Power BI Desktop, we go up to the Home Ribbon tab, Diagram View, and this shows us our tables. Now, this is a great place to create our relationships for our VLOOKUP. Now, on the transaction side, we have many duplicates of products, but of course, in our lookup table, the first column has a unique list of products. Now, if we go back to Data View, notice this is the transaction table or the fact table. There's many duplicates. Sunbell is listed many times. So the way we think of this when we're using DAX and relationships is this is the many side. Remember, for us Excel people, this would be where we put our VLOOKUP, and the product would be the lookup value. But as we copy the VLOOKUP down, that formula can see Sunbell or any product many times. If we go look at our lookup table, oh yeah, here's the first column. For a lookup table, there can only be one of each product. Now, we Excel people think of this as a lookup table. It is also thought of in business intelligence and in data analysis as a dimension table. And we want to think of this as the one side, because each product is listed only once. Now we go to Diagram View, and here's where our VLOOKUP starts. We simply drag the first column of the lookup table. I'm clicking and dragging, and I'm going to drag it over to the many side. In Power Pivot, you will see both columns highlighted in green. When I drop and let go of the mouse, there's a 1 from the lookup side to a many. That's the transaction side. This relationship will replace having to use VLOOKUP. Now, we're still going to have to use a function in this table to look up the exact match price. But guess what? It's not called VLOOKUP. It's called related. Because there's a relationship. Because the relationship is between product in the transaction table on the many side and product on the one side, all we have to do is use related and say which column we want to go and get the value from. So let's go back to data view. And we're going to click on the transaction table F sales. I'm going to double click to add a new column. I'm going to call this exact match price and enter. Now we have to come up to the formula bar. It's not like Excel where we can create our formula here. I click up there, I type RE, and there it is, highlighted in blue, the related function. Now related would not work unless we had that relationship. Now look at this, it's totally polite. It already knows that there's a relationship, and it's offering up the D product table. So I'm going to use my down arrow to get to price, because that's what I'm going to try and look up, tab. Now in Power Pivot and Power BI Desktop, anytime you refer to a column, you list the table name, and then in square brackets, the field name. Notice there's only one argument for our DAX V lookup. I simply close parentheses and enter. And through the relationship, because we told it price, it knows to go and get the price. Now, how does it know without a lookup value? Well, each row in this table, because we're using a calculated column, uses something called row context. It knows there's a relationship, so it knows to automatically look up Sunbell, then Crested Butte, then Kangaroo, and so on. So that's how you do exact match lookup. Now let's go back over to diagram view. Here is our lookup table. And we can't build a relationship. Although in other videos, if we were to have an equal distance between each number in the first column of our lookup table, then you can actually use the ceiling function over here and build a relationship. And there's a link to a video that shows you how to do that. But let's go look at our data view and our disconnected discount table. The problem with using ceiling and a relationship to, in essence, invent a relationship for approximate match is that the increments aren't the same here. Notice we go from 0 to 5, and then 5 to 15, 15 to 25, 50 to 100. So because the increment between each category for our discount is not equal, we cannot use that ceiling and relationship trick. So we're going to have to get tricky. And if you know array formulas in Excel, this formula will make sense. Now, before we jump over to our transaction table and do approximate match lookup, just remember the units column in DIS discount table. It has a first column with a bunch of units. These are the lower limits for units purchased to get a particular discount. And what we're going to do, if we go over to the fact sales table, is we're going to ask the question for each unit in each row of this table. Hey, 81. Hey, 234. How many of the items in this first column of our lookup table are less than or equal to that particular quantity for each row in that transaction table? So for 81, if I ask the question, how many of you are less than or equal to 81, will I get true, 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 false, false? What we'll do is we'll use that array operation, which is what we call it over in Excel. We'll actually use it in the filter function to filter this table just down to the rows that have a true. And then we'll use the max function on the discount column, and it will pick out 0.4 discount for a quantity of 81. All right, let's go see how to do this. We're going to go over to F sales. I'm going to double click this add column, and we're going to name this column approximate match discount and enter. Now, I'm going to come up to the formula bar. And remember, our goal is to use the max function, which is an aggregate function. So I'm going to try that before I wrap the rest of the formula around it. Now we're trying to get the max discount, so I'm going to type DIS, down arrow to discount and tab. Now right now, this max function in this calculated column, all it can do is get the max value, which is the last value. So if I hit enter, I get the last possible discount for every row. which is not what I want. I actually want to filter that discount column based on our logical test for the given row, how many are less than or equal to that 81. Now, the way we can filter that column, that discount column in a calculated column, is by using the calculate function. I'm going to type the letter C and tab. Now, calculate is the function in DAX we use to change a filter. Now, we have our expression. That's a synonym for formula. So we have our formula we want to filter. Now, the second argument, comma, is filter. Now, if we had a hard-coded criteria or condition, we could actually just type it right into calculate's filter argument. But we don't. So we're going to have to use the filter function. Now, the filter function is great because we can take a table, which is exactly what we want. We want to take that discount table, and we want to filter it. So now, the first argument of filter is table, comma, filter expression. That means I can take a column from discount and run some logical test over it so filter can filter that table. Now, the column we want in discount is the first column, units. Now, I want to compare all the values in that column and ask how many of you are less than or equal to the quantity. Now, watch this. If I click on the quantity, in earlier versions of Power Pivot, it would just put the field name in, and that's not the correct convention for DAX formulas. When you're referring to a column, you always put table name and then in square brackets the field name. Now, this is actually for this calculated column, not really the whole column, because in a calculated column, we have row context. So even though I put the whole column, as we copy down, the formula will properly see 81, 231, 30, and so on. If you know how Excel tables work, that's the same way it works in an Excel table. So now the entire column, units in discount, will be compared individually as we copy down to each unit. Now, when I close parentheses, the entire filter function delivers a filtered discount table. That filtered table will be understood by max. So it will only have the valid values in that discount. And then, of course, max will take the max. Now, I'm in filter argument for calculate. That whole filter function is sitting there. I close parentheses. And now when I hit enter, there's the correct discount, simulating approximate match lookup. Now, the goal of our last video, 1489, was to calculate the correct discounted price. So the first part of this video, we introduced both of these different types of lookups. But now watch this. So I'm going to come up here and copy this, Control-C, escape. Now I'm going to double-click this new column, call it discounted price. Actually, I already had the unit price here incorrectly. That's the correct number, but we're trying to calculate it, assuming we don't have this column here. I'm going to come up to the formula bar. That discount right there is how many pennies to discount for every $1. So in our formula, we have to say open parentheses 1 minus Control-V, close parentheses. That will give me, if I hit enter, the number of pennies to charge for every $1 in our exact match price. So at the end, I'm simply going to use multiplication RE to get to related, tab, down arrow to get to price, tab, close parentheses, and enter. Now, this is the same number we got in our last video. And depending on the requirements for calculating revenue, you might use the unrounded number. But if you're using the rounded number, then we still have one step left. We have to come up to our formula bar. And the round function in Power Pivot, Power BI Desktop, and an Excel spreadsheet are all the same. The round function in Power Query and VBA is different. VBA and Power Query use bankers rounding or halfway even rounding. But for us, this is what we want. We want standard rounding. So I come to the end, comma, 2, close parentheses, and enter. And there's our discounted unit price. That was the final goal in this calculated column. Now we could have combined these two here in a simpler formula, but I first wanted to show you the difference between exact and approximate match and then do that same formula we did last video. Now I want to go over to Power BI Desktop and create this one single formula in a calculated column. Now I have Excel Magic Trick 1490 Start. You can download this. This is a started Power BI Desktop model. I already have the relationship. And over here in Power BI Desktop, over on the right, we have relationships, tables, and this is where you build your visuals. We're not building any visuals. We're simply going to tables. And then once you select the right area, you come over to the right, and there's our tables. I'm going to click on F Sales. I can see the expanded columns, and over here I see the table. We need to create a calculated column. And how do we do that? We go up to the Modeling tab. And over here, we can create a measure. Those are formulas we use in a pivot table or some visualization. New column, that's our calculated column. And over here in Power BI Desktop, you can actually create a whole new table. But what we want is new column. So I'm going to click that. Immediately, it highlights up in the formula bar column equal. I'm going to type discounted price space equal signs. Now I have my equal sign. Now I can create my formula. Calculate. And then in the expression, I type max. DIS. I see my drop down here, and I go down to get the discount. Tab. Close parentheses. So I need to filter that max aggregate calculation. So comma. In filter 1 for calculate, I'm going to use the filter function. I need the correct table in the first argument of filter. DIS, there it is, discount. Now I'm in the filter function, screen tip, comma. Now I need to do the filter for the table in the first argument of filter. The column I want is DIS and the units. Now I need to ask the question of that entire column. How many of you are less than or equal to? Now, I would like to, like I did over in Power Pivot, simply click on there, but I can't do that. No problem. We simply type FS. I see my F sales table. I want to get row context, so I down arrow to quantity, and there it is. Now our filter inside of Calculate will see the correct quantity in each row. Close parentheses on filter. That entire filter function provides a valid list of values. In our case, it's providing the correct rows for that discount table. Then the max will know which rows and pick out the max discount. Come to the end, close parentheses on calculate, and enter. Now that only gives me the discount. We need to finish our formula, so I come to the beginning. Open parentheses 1 minus the calculate. At the end, close parentheses. That will give me the number of pennies for every $1 of price. And we need to look up the price of times. And related, down arrow to D product, price tab, close parentheses, and enter. There's our unrounded number. I come back up here. Round, open parentheses. Come to the end, comma 2, close parentheses, and enter. And there we have, in a single DAX calculated column, exact match and approximate match lookup to calculate a discounted price. All right, that was a lot of fun with DAX. We saw how to create a DAX calculated column that did both types of VLOOKUP in Power BI Desktop. Over here in Excel, we looked at relationships first and realized for exact match we needed the relationship, and then all we had to do was use related. And we talked about how to use calculate, filter, and max to do approximate match lookup. Now, if you like that video, be sure to click that thumbs up, leave a comment, and sub, because there's always lots more videos to come from Excel is fun. And also, DAX is fun, Power Pivot is fun, Power BI is fun, and even Power Query is fun. All right, we'll actually see you next week for a business problem, and we'll solve it using Excel formulas, DAX formulas, Power Pivot, Power BI, and even Power Query. All right, we'll see you next video.